So this video is on frequency polygons, and this is another type of graph to represent group frequency table data, and it can get confusing as to which one looks like what, and the way I remember it is looking at the word polygon. They're the shapes like pentagons, hexagons, well they're regular sided polygons, and they look a bit like this. And you'll see when we actually draw one now how they're kind of like similar to what a frequency polygon looks like. And the most important thing to remember, we're just going to look at 2 exam questions to show you what to do here, is that the frequencies are mapped against the mid-intervals, and that will become much clearer when we look at this first example. So here is our first exam question, and it says that the table shows some information about the weight of 60 apples, and then it gives you the weights between 100 and 110, there were 5 apples, the 110 to 120 weight in grams where were 9 apples, etc. And then it goes draw a frequency polygon to show this information. So the way I run through this in my head when I was in your position was I saw frequency polygon and I thought of these type of shapes here, so I knew it was the lines like this. And then we use this really important fact, the one we wrote down, you use the midpoint interval values. So basically, because you've got a window here, 100 to 110 grams, you take the midpoint. So I'm going to draw an extra column onto this table with the midpoints. So the midpoints of these gaps here, so the weight between 100 and 110, halfway, which is the midpoint, the halfway point, would be 105. The midpoint halfway between 110 and 120 would be 115 grams. 120 to 130 would be 125. And 130 to 140 would be 135. And then 140 to 150 would be 145 grams. So basically, you plot the midpoints against the frequencies. You plot that against that. And that is as simple as that. So what is the midpoint? The first point we have 105 in weight, so 105. And there were 5 apples at this weight, so up to 5, and do a cross there. That's our first point. Then we take the midpoint of the next one, 115, which is here, and there were 9, so if we plot that, 9 apples, so the frequency is 9. Next midpoint, 125, and there were 14, frequency of 14, plot there. Then 135, and there were 24, 135, 24. And then 145, the midpoint against the frequency, which was 8. So there we have all our data points, and then you just join them all up with a straight line. So there we have our frequency polygon, and as you can see, it kind of looks like some sort of polygon-y shape, and that's how I remember it. So you take the midpoint of each group and you plot it against the frequency. This next example, so the table shows some information about heights of 60 plants, and there's the table, and then it says draw a frequency polygon to show this information. So it's given us the axes for us, so we know we need to plot the midpoint against the frequency. So this time I'm going to do it without adding the extra column, and I'm just going to do it straight off. So I'm going to say, look at my first group, what's the midpoint halfway between 20 and 30, that's 25. So I put 25 and the frequency there are 8. That point there. The midpoint of 30 and 40 is 35, and there are 13, so I go 35, and there were 13. 1, 2, 3. The next one, 40 and 50, the midpoint is 45 here, and there were 25, so 25 is the frequency. This one is 50 and 60, the midpoint of halfway would be 55, and there were 10. And 60 and 70 would be 65, and there were 4. 65, 4. And now you just join all those up with a straight line, and there you have your frequency polygon. So ta-da! All you need to remember for frequency polygon is what it actually is, and then the fact you're plotting the midpoint against a frequency.